Hey guys, so it's here bringing you another video, so welcome to a dev update. We do these all the time, but we're doing it in a slightly different format because Riot themselves has done just a video. Normally, these Lull Please, or used to be called Riot Please videos, used to have a, sometimes anyway, a article attached to them. Doesn't seem to be an article attached to this one. So what we're going to be doing is, which is really nice what Riot have done, is down at the bottom, they have their little things that they're talking about. So after every single one, we're going to pause it and talk about what I think. And what I want you guys to do is I encourage you guys to give your thoughts. So this seems to be a pretty big one that I will say a lot of the game community, population, whatever you want to call it, does seem to be pretty unhappy with the state of the game. So I think Riot is doing this Lull Please to talk about everything. And I will say I started to watch this and then I thought this would be a good idea to watch along with you. So I watched to maybe about here, about 140, and then after that we'll kind of get into things together. So the intro I'm going to skip because they're just explaining this used to be called Riot Please, but because they've launched a bunch of new games, it has to be called Lull Please because they might do a Valorant Please or a TFT Please or something like that. So let's get into it. So the state of the game. Here we go.
Hey folks, my name's Andre and I'm the game director for League of Legends. We're going to be talking today about how the preseason item update went and the overall state of the game right now.
Well, I should say, let me first, before we begin, I guess we should give what I think of the game. I'm not happy with how League is right now. Like a lot of my friends who also play the game, I've even had friends that have quit playing League of Legends because of the new items. So that's why sometimes there can be a bit of a sense of like, oh, Huz, you can tell you're frustrated with the new change. Because when my friends have actually quit playing because of this, I have a personal thing in it. You know, that's where there's been no flex with friends, right? They've all quit. So it does frustrate me. It doesn't feel incredibly healthy. And what I would also say, and I said this on stream earlier, is when Riot sometimes have done really big updates, the best times where they do it is when they kind of go, we're going to try this, and if it doesn't work, we'll revert to what we know worked before. I haven't heard that being said at all. So if you remember Dynamic Queue, right at the beginning of Dynamic Queue, the lead dev at the time said, we're doing this, we're changing this, but if it's not liked, we'll get rid of it. It was gotten rid of because the community didn't like it. A lot of people seem not to like the new items, but I've never heard Riot say, oh yeah, there's a chance we'll revert them. So that's just one thing to point out. But yeah, I'm not incredibly happy. I think there's too much damage in the game. Lifesteal is still obnoxious, but it is getting nerfed soon. I think Riot is on this crusade for the items to be successful. They're deeming it variety. Why is that? I don't get why that's such a thing with Riot. Who cares about item variety? What I want is balance. What Riot's been doing is all they've been like caring about is variety. So if a champion has a low pick rate, they've just been over buffing the item to get that amazing variety that they want. You know, if an item's overpowered, people are just going to do it. So they just keep buffing items that are weak to make people build it. That doesn't seem the healthiest way to balance the game, in my opinion. But let's get into it.
Looking at items first off, we think we've got in place a system that should allow some good increases to choice and diversity for most champions.
Who cares?
At the moment though, individual item balance is often overshadowing what could be interesting choices. Items like Sunfire or Gore Drinker have just been universally good choices for the damage or healing they bring. And so one of their first priorities has been chipping items like that down so they're not just dominating in terms of raw stats.
We'll say that is partially true, but again, on the flip side, they've done the complete opposite. So they have been chipping some of the more dominant items, but then like Everfrost, no one was building Everfrost in the early season. Riot overbuff it to make people buy it, and now that's the dominant AP thing for a lot of champions. So it's, yeah.
On the other side of things, we've then also got some items that just haven't been delivering. So we've been doing work on things like Chemtech Putrefier, which we've been broadening the feasible users there.
Well, so again, I'm going to pause this a lot. Chemtech Putrefier is the speed up for tanks, if I'm not mistaken. That seems to be now overpowered. That like even supports a building that item. So that's the point. They are over buffing items because they have low pick rate on the item, and then you're just making those items overpowered to make Riot's own way of thinking the items are successful worth. Again, Riot, if it was at the beginning, I don't know if they might have said it at the beginning of this item change. We're deeming this a success by if the variety goes up. I'd probably be like, why is that the variety? Like, it's a bit weird when a company makes a change, but they give the parameters to success. They're setting that parameter themselves. it's a bit weird, but anyway.
In addition to that stuff, we're also looking at adding some new non-mythic items to fill in some gaps.
I think that's good.
A couple of examples of those are an enchanter item we're trying that's meant to be good against dive or anti-carry heavy teams, or a tank item aimed at countering split pushes, so that even if you're not a split pushing champion yourself or able to just 1v1 a split pushing trend or whatever, there's still a good item to turn to in those
Zarot's
situations.
coming back!
Let's look at mythic items in a bit more detail. One of the things we particularly want to avoid is when champions are hard bound to a particular mythic.
Why?
We're defining hard binding as when a champion buys that item in 75% or more of their games.
Again, that's my point. And you guys can say this. Why is that a problem? I don't care. My Elise, right? I've been playing a lot of Elise. I buy the same mythic on her every game. Do I care? No. I literally don't care. And people did say that the counterpoint to this potentially is, Huz, you play a lot of champions, so you get the variety in the game feeling different every game because you play a different champ most games. For someone that has a main or a one trick, maybe for them it's a bit repetitive, which I guess maybe, but then you're choosing to play the same champion every game. That is repetitive. So I personally, I've played this game for such a long time. I love League of Legends, but I still don't understand why the success of the items is determined by variety. I don't get it. I genuinely don't.
Sunfire is a good example of that, with a lot of tanks buying Sunfire in 80% plus of their games. Post nerfs, that's down to about 45%, which we think is a lot healthier. Fighters and assassins are also purchasing a pretty wide range of options in most cases. And marksmen are in a fairly reasonable spot, with all three of the mythics aimed particularly at them. On the other end of things, enchanters and mages, by contrast, we think need some more work on their mythic items, both in terms of the satisfaction from purchasing them and some of the actual choice architecture as well.
I'd agree with
Let's
that.
talk about a hot topic this year now, the amount of burst damage in League. Our goal with the preseason was to not increase the amount of burst damage in the game.
Pause! Worth knowing a few things. So this is where sometimes, again, I love Riot, I'm a League partner, I respect them, but this is where his goal or their goal was not increasing burst damage in the preseason. Okay. So when we were all even before preseason, we were in beta or out on PBE, and then in preseason when everybody was screaming the damage is way too high, why did it take them so long to untune the damage? It was in the season. It's only been maybe a few weeks, maybe a month until they have toned it down quite a bit. They ignored all of that. They ignored people on PBE. They ignored the preseason. They waited for a month until the season began for them to go, the damage is too high. You can't say our goal was not to increase the damage and then completely ignore 2 to 3 months of people playing on PBE and preseason and going, the damage is too high. There was Reddit threads nearly every day, and I know Reddit isn't the best place, but there was YouTubers, Reddit pros all saying, God, the damage has gone up. And just to remind everybody, a few months ago, someone did do all they did was take raw data. They took the average damage done to average damage done and taken and everything for every single champion in the game. And they took it before the patch for preseason and then after the patch for preseason. And roughly, on average, the average damage done for champions went up by 30%. That's mental. But
some of our initial tuning and design with items, however, did result in burst going up. As a result,
which took ages to fix.
And we've removed a bunch of that systemic front-loaded damage, making changes to things like Duskblade, Lichbane, Luden's Echoes, etc. We're still monitoring and talking about burst pretty actively.
Still too high.
We think it's probably acceptable, though very much on the high side, but might end up taking a bit more out of the game in the moderate future.
Yeah.
And on a related topic to burst damage, we should talk a bit about systemic healing in League.
Oh, here we go.
Healing that comes from items and runes. We do think healing has an important place in the game. Without sustain, some of the lane trades can end up just being so punishing that you get forced back too easily, and the game snowballs massively. But we don't want it to be invalidating a lot of play and decision making,
which
like
it currently
can when
is.
overtuned.
Yeah.
Some of our item changes ended up introducing more systemic healing than we felt.
And Omnivamp. Worth knowing that. Again, there's one thing just to have lifesteal. If you can't auto-attack, you can't get your health back. Or just having spell vamp. If you can't use your spells, you can't get your health back. When it's Omnivamp, where you're auto-attacking and using spells, that's where a champion can get so much health really fast. And obviously that was a new thing they introduced.
What was healthy for the game. And that results in things like grievous wounds feeling too mandatory and chip damage just not mattering.
Well, what it's saying, grievous wounds feels mandatory. No, it doesn't. It feels useless. Again, there's a lot of people are saying skip buying it because it's not enough. If it's not enough to do any anti-healing of note, skip the item because the items are generally kind of weak. Buy a better item and hope you can just burst, because again, burst is so high in the game. Hope you can just burst the thing where it can't out-heal your burst. So, again, a lot of people have made suggestions. Obviously, healing next patch, thankfully, is being toned down. He might mention it in a second. But I do think when Riot themselves, in their whole let's make variety, item variety a thing, but then in every single game you have to buy anti-healing, isn't that itself a contradiction to what Riot wants? Riot wants you don't have to buy the same item every game, but with healing so strong, you have to buy anti-healing every game. That's a bit weird, right? So I think they definitely need to do way more when it comes to healing. Obviously, healing's always going to be in the game, but there needs to be something. It just feels so strong right now. To the point that like people have made suggestions of like, oh, maybe Grievous Wounds should do like 90% anti-healing or something for like a second or 2 seconds. Definitely something needs to be done, because literally I've watched a video, I think it was an Afro Move video a few days ago, maybe people watched the same video. There was a Graves on the enemy team or on his team in that video who was, I'm not even kidding, a tickle from death, and it took him like 3 auto attacks to get to full health. And it was like, I was even shocked. I was like, it was a pretty strong Graves, but 3 auto attacks. And I was like, huh, that's mental. And like he said a little bit earlier, what healing can do is negate skill in the game, because you can do trade. Oh, that was really close. Okay, I'm going to go for another little trade on him and go for the all-in in a few seconds. Oh, he already out-healed and is back to full health. Ah, never mind. So that's where the game does become, we're either one-shotting, bursting people, or we didn't kill them, everyone's just going to out-heal and get back to full health, and then it's a burst game again, because that's what it's becoming. So they need to tone down burst and healing. Those are the 2 pillars of the game right now.
As a result, we've gone back and we've hit some of those sources of healing. Things like Moonstone, Ravenous Hunter, Gore Drinker, Ravenous Hydrate, etc.
It is worth knowing, today when I played League, the Moonstone meta is in full swing. It's very much like the Ardent meta again, that there are supports that now are laning. That I had a Karma top lane, and obviously Seraphine is a bit of a controversial one, but a Seraphine mid isn't building like a mage, she's building like a support. Or Karma top lane, like I heard earlier, building support in top lane. Ardent meta, a lot of people hated. Riot themselves were like, yeah, Ardent meta wasn't great. And I did hear through the grapevine, when Ardent meta was a thing, people did stop playing the game because of it. Right now, the Moonstone meta is back. Like, it's the new Ardent meta. But it's still strong. Again, Riot, he just said that they've nerfed the healing of Moonstone. So why is solo laners still buying it? Because it's really strong.
For some, straight nerfs. For others, we've wanted to shift some of that power towards durability in other forms. Let's shift gears now and talk about role strength in Lull and how that's going at the moment.
Jungle.
We want to ensure that all the different positions have a meaningful impact on the outcome of the match.
Which I do think they do.
Some positions will be more about scaling or roaming or vision control or whatever than others, but every position should be relevant. When we first launched the preseason though, Marksmen and Enchanters were in too weak a spot, so we've gone and made some changes to give them some more early impact. Junglers, on the other hand, were in too impactful a spot.
Which they still are.
Overly deciding games by themselves. And so we've gone and removed some golden XP.
Which again, that change didn't do much.
Finally, let's talk about snowballing rates in League. Whenever we do a major update like a preseason, snowball is one of the things we track particularly carefully. From what we've seen, looking at the metrics we track, snowball rates before and after preseason are very similar.
Yeah.
So we think we're doing okay there.
I don't think the snowballing's a problem too much.
This is also one of the things we'd like to focus on more in the future, get to an even better spot if possible. And so comeback mechanics especially are one of our potential focuses for this year's coming preseason.
Which are coming, what? They are talking about next year. Oh god. Well, but again, a big thing that I say with role strength, the reason why jungle is so strong and decisive is usually there's one jungler that's really strong and one jungler that's really weak. There's one jungler that can get the dragons, there's one jungler that can get the Rift Heralds, usually. they're talking about combat mechanics. They took away catch-up XP in the jungle. I think that clearly is something that may need to go back in the jungle, because when one jungler gets behind, because of all the neutral camps that only one jungler can get, the other jungler simply cannot catch up. Because then, if let's say there's a Hecarim, right, and he gets ahead, I had this game earlier, I was playing Elise, a Hecarim got ahead of me in the early game, I ain't catching back up to him. It's just not happening, because if it's in a 1v1, he kills me in a 1v1. If I go for a Rift Scuttle, whatever, I'm dead. He can invade me, I'm dead. Like, there's no way I catch back up. So catch-up XP, I think, would be a way you weirdly calm down the jungle again by making the junglers level pegging with each other again. Well, right now, it's so dominant that one jungler is stronger than the other. That's just me, obviously. And that's the point. I will say, if it does sound like I'm being a bit on this Rioter, I love the game. He loves the game. We all love the game. They want feedback. That's one thing I will give Riot to a T, is that they do want feedback. And this is my feedback. This is what we're talking about. I love that they're making this video, by the way. It's fantastic. So let's keep going.
We particularly want to address cases where you're behind and it just sort of feels a bit hopeless. It's unclear what you should do to get back in the game.
Well, I will add. So like this type of thing he's talking about, I think, personally, this season has impacted one type of champions the most, in solo queue at least, early game champions. So snowballing isn't mental right now, as weird as that sounds. I don't think all of us kind of go, oh, it's really mental. But what sometimes does feel bad is you're playing an early game champion and you don't have a great early game because of the strength of the new items and mythic items. Lull to me feels like mid-game has been brought forward because the items themselves feel stronger. So if your champion is an early game champion, let's say on average, we're just giving rough timers here, before the new items, the early game may have lasted about 12 minutes. 12 to 14 minutes I would still consider on average early game. Mainly lane phase, maybe a couple skirmishes with teams here or there, but mainly there. So you have 12 minutes as an early game jungler to do your thing. If you don't, then there you go. I would put that timer down now to like 8 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes. So an early game jungler has lost like 2 minutes of like their time of the game. Because when people start getting their first mythics for an early game champion, it kind of feels like mid game is already here with how strong these items are. Like if a Draven doesn't get ahead in the early game before the enemy AD carriers are their mythic, he gets outscaled. If a Renekton, and I know Renekton's been a really touchy subject this year because it's like, oh dude, he's getting nerfed all the time. In pro play, he's a different beast because the pros can use the early aggression of Renekton to take over the map early with, you know, team play and everything. Solo queue, that's not the case most of the time. So if a Renekton doesn't get ahead early and the enemy top lane is smart and go, I know I beat you later, I'm just going to chill, it feels unhealthy. So that's one thing I would say as well with catch-up XP and everything is not just catch-up XP, early game champions I think have been impacted somewhat too. I love Elise. I've had fantastic games of Elise, but it's all about me snowballing early. If I don't snowball early, the game's done. Like, I'm just lost. It sucks. But yeah, that's just the way it goes right now.
Or it's clear, but it's basically just wait for the other team to screw up. So we're exploring ways to give a losing team plays they can try and make when things aren't going their way.
Okay.
Thank you for watching, folks. Here's Jess again.
The client! The touchy subject to leave.
Let's get into the client.
She didn't even want to.
It's obviously been a pretty long-standing pain point. So in the beginning of 2020, the first focus area that was clear to us was actually how much memory it was taking to kind of load each one of these screens. We then basically optimized each one of those screens and was hoping for an improved overall navigation experience. But champ select and end of game screen continued to be pain points for players, and so we took a special look at them. What you should see at the end of the day is a significantly faster client compared to the start of 2020. Now, a bunch of you have kind of mentioned, you know, the social panel is still an issue for you. All those issues that you see with friends not showing up, things like that, we're going to be addressing that this year.
I just say, worth also noting, my friends list on my main account died. Like, just straight up died. I had to add all, like, friends again. I have lost friends on League that I might have just, like, slightly forgotten about. That when they did the whole integration with it's your Riot account now, not your other, what happened with my account is I have an account called Huzzy on EUS and an account called Huzzy on North America. It merged and did weird stuff with those friends lists, and then I lost my friends list on my main account. It was bizarre, and that was it. Like, I just lost my friends list. I had to re-add people. It was really weird. That never got fixed. That it's still like that today. So, yeah. But I also will say, yes, I do get that. You've been disconnected all the time. But also, I think Riot do need to address the frustration with the client that people have when the client breaks in champion select and you're forced to dodge. That sometimes happens to people in promo games. And it's nothing to do with you. The client's just black. And it's like, oh, I can't pick a champ. I guess I lose my promo match. Something needs to be done about that, definitely. And that's all to do with like the state of the client. So again, hopefully they'll be fixing things. That'll be great.
The second thing that we're going to be looking into is stability. We've seen kind of the crash reports that players have been sharing with us. So we want to take a pretty firm stance and actually do a full burn down on all the crashes. And so we're going to be addressing a lot of those too.
Sweet. That's good.
Next, I want to touch on game clarity. Game clarity is one of those things that all the teams kind of work on in a more evergreen way for any of the content that they make. But we want to bring up this topic right now because it's been over 10 years and we've pushed a lot of champions.
Because all the new champs are like looking the same.
And so what we want to make sure we don't betray is kind of that level of competitive integrity where now characters might be unreadable or hard to understand what they do or how do you play against them. The first input into that framework is the silhouette. It's the foundation for all of our champions, and we want to make sure that each and every champion has a distinct silhouette.
That's cool idea.
So for example, take Senna. Senna is one of those champions that her silhouette is kind of defined by her ginormous gun. And so you can kind of understand that that gun is her source of power. And what we can do is kind of stretch all the other elements that kind of surround her abilities, because at the end of the day, the enemy knows that it's all going to be coming from this gun. I'll also give a counterexample. Lee Sin is a pretty tough character to actually make skins for, not because he's a complex character by any means, but actually because he has very few distinguishing factors about him. But his animations are what makes him really Lee Sin. And so when we were creating Dragon Mancer,
that's such a good skin.
It was actually pretty tough. What ended up happening is, when the skin reached PvE, people were starting to notice that they couldn't really recognize that this was Lee Sin, and that was a little bit hard for them to kind of play against. As we saw that feedback come in, we made adjustments, and Dragon Mancer Lee Sin is better for it now, but that's the kind of problem
I was unaware of that.
When we're describing the importance of working around a silhouette of a champion, but also being cognizant of like each of the pieces and how they contribute to the readability of a champion. Next on the list is a new thematic called Space Groove. Space Groove is this kind of wacky, retro-futuristic thematic that we've been really excited to see come to life. It also includes a new champion that will be joining that skin line. And this is the infamous Top Blade Skirmisher that you may have heard of at season start as well.
Yep.
Lastly, we're going to have One For All actually join in with the event. And so for all the One For All lovers who have been asking for this, it's your time to shine. The game mode will be up. And that's it for me. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this kind of provides more context on what we're working on and what we're looking to improve. Feel free to give any feedback for all of it, and see you on the Rift.
All right, there you go. Also, again, firstly, just to say thanks to Riot for doing it. I don't know if a Rioter will see this. I'll make myself bigger. There you go. Potentially they will. Again, it's great that we get these. Like, genuinely, it's a good thing that we get these type of updates. So my thoughts I gave throughout the video. It does seem Riot is definitely going in the right direction. Maybe they should have done this after the lifesteal and healing nerf that's coming in the next patch, because obviously a lot of people still have that built up frustration about all the healing in the game. But that nerf is coming. Will it be enough? Not sure. I still think Ravenous Hunter is going to be the rune to take. There's no reason it not to be, even with it in a nerfed form, because there's just so many benefits to lifesteal in the game. It keeps you in the match, as they mentioned here. But yeah, I still am on the fence personally about the new items. I still personally, as I've said throughout this video, I don't know why it's such a big thing for them to have item diversity. Balance to me is number one. Then it's diversity, and the game doesn't feel perfectly balanced right now, right? So, well, is there ever such a thing as perfect balance? Probably no. But the game doesn't feel balanced in a lot of areas. But it has improved, so let's take that as a positive. It definitely feels better now than it was 2 months ago, which is good. I do wish Riot did act upon the preseason and PBE data, I guess, maybe a bit more. Maybe they just didn't trust that data and they wanted a month of a ranked season data. Maybe they just see that as a bit of a difference, possibly. But yeah, like, again, it's a good thing that we get this. It's a very nice thing. A lot of game companies don't do this type of thing, so we're very fortunate in that avenue. But give your thoughts down below. Let me know what you think. It'd be very interesting to know what you guys think about all of this stuff. The new event looks a bit weird. I think that was Nasus. It looked really weird. But obviously, yeah, Viego's wife, she is that champion. That's not like an LPP leak, by the way. It's just known that that's probably his wife. Which will be interesting. I don't know when that event will be. Maybe in the next couple of weeks, months. I'm not sure. But there we go, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed this League, please. I have to call it Lull, please, not Riot, please. And give your thoughts. Like the video if you enjoyed. Let me know what you think down below. Feel free to break your content up, or like what you think of the state of the game, mythic items, burst and healing, roll strength, all that stuff. Feel free to break it down if you wanted to go in depth. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe. See you guys next time. Peace.